Welcome to the Australian Property Investment Podcast with your host, Aaron Christie David. Each episode, we ask an expert to share their key insights for aspiring investors to make confident property choices.
G'day everyone, my name is Aaron Christie David. I run a mortgage broking business called Atelier Wealth, where we specialise in helping investors their first investment property through to scaling up their portfolio as well. And as part of that journey, we're hell-bent on making sure that investors get fed with the right information, get some great content and some education from what we call best-in-breed partners. And as part of bringing some partners onto the show, we want to make sure that they're walking the walk and talking the talk. And one of the buyer's agents that I'm really proud to have on our show today is Matt Sharp. Matt, welcome on. How you doing?
G'day, Aaron. Mate, thank you so much for having me. Very humbled to be invited on as a guest because, there's some pretty reputable people that you have on here. So, mate, looking forward to our chat.
Mate, reputation's everything, right? And just what you said, it's having a good caliber of people, and you certainly fit the bill. So why you're kind of modest. What we really want to kind of do is share a little bit about your journey, personally on a property side as well, and then talk through, because one of the areas that you focus on, i.e. being the Central Coast, has become such a hot spot, not only for families that are looking to move, but also investors as well. So we want to go there in our chat together today. But before we do, Matt, it's what I call the 3 Ps. So it's a bit about yourself personally, property side, and professionally on a work front that you run Sharp Property Buyers. But can you take us through the Matt Sharp story in a nutshell, mate?
All right. I'll try and be quick. So grew up here on the Central Coast, had a great childhood, surfed a lot, played rugby league a lot, and really just very vested in the community here, what the Central Coast has to offer. I grew up with a brother and 2 stepbrothers, so had a bit of a blended family sort of a setup, which was cool. And I guess along with that come, us sort of, me, my brother and my mum sort of renting a little bit. So I think now as I get a little bit older, I circle back and think maybe that's probably why I became so property obsessed. Yeah. But obviously went through school, probably wasn't as committed as I should have been. And I was probably more focused on surfing and rugby league, and had aspirations to play rugby league at the top level, but wasn't able to do so basically because of ability and probably application. After sort of, footy sort of finished, went into a corporate role, worked in the corporate space for nearly 10 years, and then obviously transitioned over into this buyer's agent space. But ever since a really young age, I guess I've always had a fascination with property. And I think it really did start from, looking for rentals with mum and my brother and what that looked like. And obviously starting to save for our first property from a really young age. I think I was around 18 when we first started putting away money to buy our first property. Wow. Yeah. So, a little bit unique in some ways, but very fortunate as well.
Yeah. I mean, on that point, I had a chat. I did an interview yesterday with one of the journalists talking about some of the new initiatives for home owners. So it's called Home Start Finance, right? And I guess one of the impacts is for families that are becoming renters, the children have that little bit of vulnerability, lack of stability, sometimes maybe having to move and being displaced, rent. And they lose that confidence maybe to get into the market, where it almost sounds like yours is a different story, which is, I want to rewrite that story, which is I don't want to become a lifetime renter or get stuck on the rental trap. I actually want to own my own property. And maybe that level of insecurity then kind of meant that you wanted to have some security. Is that a fair way?
Yeah, mate. No, I think it is a good point. And it's something that I haven't really given much thought to until sort of later in life now, I guess. But there's no doubt, I think security's got something to do with it. I was very aware, I don't know if I was jealous, but I was very aware that, close friends had lived in the family home, if you like, for 10, 15 years where we'd moved around a little bit. But in saying that, it gave, I don't know, it definitely, this isn't a hard luck story by any shape and any form, but I guess what it did, it gave me a new insight into property. And from such a young age, I can literally remember walking into a real estate agent probably as a 10 or 11-year-old, running in, getting the rental list on an A4 piece of paper, and then driving around with mum and my brother going, should we rent this one? Should we rent that one? And I was literally analysing property at that point. I was looking at it going, okay, can we afford $300 a week? Yes or no? What else do we get for $330 a week? Or whatever it was. And do you want to live in Wamberal? Do you want to live in Terrigal? How far away is this from the school? Yeah, it's unbelievable. It honestly gave me some really, really good skills. But yeah, circling back, I think security is one thing. And when I first started saving for that first property, like all I wanted to do was just buy a home for myself. I didn't have any sort of plans to build this big property empire or anything like that. I still don't really, but yeah, the main focus was just to buy basically a family home and just have that, that solid nest egg, if you like.
Excellent. And I think what you mentioned there at the very end was like, you still have hunger and aspirations, right? It's what gets you out of bed every day, but it's maybe the need to be content with what you have as well. I feel like and I've dealt with investors that have big portfolios and some that are starting out or have small ones. And sometimes the ones that have less are actually more happier than sometimes the ones that have more. It's a bit of an irony sometimes, isn't it? Like the more you yearn, the lack of contentment you may have as well.
100%. And mate, I see very similar stuff in my industry. I see first home buyers buying here on the Central Coast, absolutely over the moon with their purchase. And then we have higher income earners looking for a weekender, in the upwards of $2, $3, $4, $5 million, and they just seem miserable. They can't find what they like. It's unbelievable. But it's all gratitude, isn't it?
Yeah, it is that. It's all that attitude. Mate, you mentioned that you've grown up there. So, I mean, you probably would have seen a huge evolution and possibly gentrification with some of those areas you mentioned. Say Terrigal, for example, becomes like the ultimate spot for Sydney. North Coast is head up for the weekend, for example, and even Wamberal gone through a lot of change. So can you take us through a little bit about how you've seen, especially having your feet on the ground, some of those changes and those shifts in the areas that you've just mentioned as well?
Yeah, mate, there's been huge amounts of shifts. And my mum actually, she lives up in the Hunter Valley now. And every time she comes like back down to visit us, which is, sort of weekly or every couple of weeks, she just can't believe how much has changed here, especially Terrigal and how many people are around and the developments and whatnot. But certainly it's gentrified over the years and it's become very, very popular for obvious reasons. We're in arm's length from Sydney. But I would say Terrigal's definitely gentrified, but it's always been that sort of, I guess it's always been the heartbeat of the Central Coast, right? Like whenever you think of it, you think of sort of Terrigal straight away, or whenever you think about going to grab dinner, most people will sort of head towards Terrigal because that's where all the best restaurants and night spots or cafes are. One area up here that I've actually just completely witnessed from start to finish of gentrification has been the Long Jetty area. Incredibly sought after now. Like, it wasn't so long ago, maybe around 8 years ago, it basically had nothing out there, right? No draw cards other than the beach, which was great, and a golf club, which was up on the headland there. But slowly but surely, there was a really popular cafe that come in, and then another cafe, and then a couple of retail stores, and then literally before our eyes, that is just gentrified. And now that is incredibly sought after, that area. A lot of young families moving up there. It's a pretty trendy sort of an area as well, some cool bars and some cool restaurants. But I would say that Long Jetty area is basically unmatched, when we're talking about areas that have transformed over sort of the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Even what you mentioned there, which is about, hey, it's got a successful cafe and that then brought another cafe, for example. I almost feel like that is one of those lead indicators. Like we talk about infrastructure, for example, but then you talk about gentrification and cafes. I mean, we're down here in Thirroul, and it's the very same thing. Like 10 years ago, there was a glory of jeans for the whole area. Now they joke that this is one of the most densely populated areas for cafes, for example, and it's got that level of trendiness to it now as well. So you kind of go, a business does well, another business comes in, then the strip gets a little bit more foot traffic. Then you put a retail arm. Then you put like a couple of boutique stores there as well. Then foot traffic and passerby traffic stops. And that almost becomes the pull attraction for an area that didn't used to have that level of trendiness attached to it as well. Puts itself on the map, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Newtown's probably the prime example in Australia about had a bad or dirty history. Balmain was probably the same, really working class, but now it's become like cafe central, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you got the mums with the bugaboos getting around, they're a big draw card as well. Yeah. But I lived in New York in 2016, and I remember speaking to someone over there, and they were saying that Starbucks, the impact that Starbucks had on different neighborhoods throughout America, and how they were basically the anchor for certain areas and whether or not they're going to gentrify or not, and the impact, the positive impact, if you like, that they had on the housing market and the real estate market within that area was incredible.
Yeah. I guess it's one of those things that aren't really openly talked about as an investor, but you go, hey, look, it's one of those things where you see a few successful retailers or cafes coming in. It could almost be that start of that shift that comes in at at a grassroots level as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow the cafes.
Absolutely. Mate, being on the ground also has its other advantages, right? Where you're seeing firsthand the shifts, you're seeing what the right spots to buy. And that's generally one of the reasons I love buyer's agencies, because you have an intimate knowledge at a street level. So when someone's looking on real estate or domain, they typically, filtering by price or by bedroom, not knowing that they could be buying on the wrong side of the street or the wrong side of the suburb, for example, as well. So take me through, like, when you're buying when you're buying in and around the Central Coast, which is the area that you service, how that local knowledge and those insights have become your competitive advantage, and where you've been able to help a couple of families or investors as well.
Yeah, mate, really good point you raise. Look, the Central Coast, just as a region, has so many different demographics, right? It's incredibly diverse. The difference between Umina and Woy Woy, which are neighbouring suburbs, completely different. On a map, they obviously probably look very similar. Same with Terrigal to Avoca, and then we just spoke about Long Jetty. So there is a huge difference, and a lot of people will come to us and say, yeah, we want to move to the Central Coast, and they'll sort of send us, they'll send us 2 or 3 properties that they're looking, and they're scattered all over. I'm like, okay, let's just take it back a little bit here. What do you really like about the Central Coast, and why are you moving? And I guess the reason why we do that is to try and understand what it is that they want to get out of their move, right? So do they like playing golf? Do they like going to the beach? Do they like riding horses? Like, what's the driver there? And I think, as you mentioned, just trying to stay ahead of the pack, if you like, or even understanding where the markets are shifting, I feel like that's been invaluable for us, in terms of our on-the-ground knowledge. For example, we've sort of seen it with, I guess, what would be referred to as the ripple effect, with property as prices sort of shift out. I think around 12, 18 months ago, a lot of people really wanted to be around that sort of Terrigal, Wamberal, Baddo Bay area. And we were able to sort of buy on the fringes around the Killarney Vale and even Long Jetty area. And we literally, in real time, were seeing people physically at opens, say at Wamberal, then seeing them later in the afternoon at an inspection at Killarney Vale, for example, right? Yeah. So we were seeing that real-time shift. And I guess from our point of view, and I guess the advantage for us is, that's ahead of any data or anything that's ever going to be online or what you can see online. So that was that's one major impact that anyone can have on the ground. But the local knowledge is absolutely critical. And that's not even touching on, obviously, your relationships that you have and even within other professionals within the community as well. When you hear about certain properties coming to the market or certain people thinking about selling as well, right?
Spot on. And that is exactly another point that we want to have a chat about, which is relationships. That is a huge advantage that as buyer's agents, you have at your disposal. It's local knowledge, but also local relationships that you've taken time to build, and you've done business together. They get to know you, so you're a known quantity. They know that your clients are the real deal. So whenever I'm having a chat with clients and they're going, hang on, this is a hot property market. Why would anyone have their property off market or not listed because they can get more for it? So what's the value in getting a buyer's agent when I can effectively have the same property access to online? And I'm like, well, hang on. There are always off-market opportunities because some people maybe aren't ready to sell yet, or they've got some work going on in their property, or maybe it's pre-market, so they will take it to market, but you get first bite of the cherry sometimes as well. So I guess I want to hear your counter argument where someone says properties aren't listed online in such a hot market, therefore there are no off-market opportunities. What's maybe your rebuttal to that, or what's been your success on that as well to that point, which maybe is a counter to that argument as well?
Look, yeah, and it's, I guess the off-market stuff's a buzzword that gets thrown around from everyone, right? I'm sure there are lots of buyers agents that say they buy the most off-markets compared to everyone. I was even on an email trail this morning from a sales agent saying off-market property, but it's sent out to the whole database as well, right? So I don't know what that means. But look, I think what I usually say is, especially when people come to me and ask that stuff, I think every single off-market property needs to be assessed on its merits, right? So there's a whole bunch of reasons why properties are off-market, which, a couple of them you just mentioned, but one could be price, the other could be timing. The other one could, also thinking about whether or not the owners are open to whether or not they want their house to be open or not to the general public. Yeah. Their circumstances might be a little bit different. The seller might want to be a little bit discreet, but I certainly think if if there's a buyer's agent out there that's plugged into the community and has got those strong relationships, they should definitely have access to those types of properties. Now, we're looking at off-market properties and pre-market properties all the time. Some we buy and a lot we pass on. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why we pass on them as well. But it's about just being...
What would be those reasons? Sorry to jump in there, but what would be some of the reasons? Because again, you're seeing hundreds, probably thousands of properties a year. What are some of the reasons that you are passing up opportunities, for example? Maybe they don't fit the brief, but then maybe they're shortlisted, but then you're knocking them out. So what's some of the reasons?
Sometimes that we're literally just passing on them because of price.
Okay.
I think occasionally, and there's literally one that I looked at on Saturday afternoon, and this is fresh in my mind, but we feel like the price is probably a little bit too high. And it's a risk that I'm willing to take for our clients to say, look, this is priced at X. So let's just say it's priced at 2.2. I think it's probably closer to around 2. My recommendation, my advice is that we wait. We wait a little bit. I don't want our guys to go in and pay a premium price if they don't really have to. And if I've got some strong comparable evidence to say otherwise and where I believe the price sits. So that's probably the main reason, outside of if it doesn't fit the brief as well, right? And look, I'll be honest and say, in a moving market, especially what we're experiencing here on the Central Coast, very, very difficult for me to say that, and sometimes I've got to
Someone will come along and pay 2.2 for it, right?
Exactly. It's something that I say. It's something that I say to my clients. You've got to be as transparent, as honest as you can, but at the same time, our reputation, like we sort of spoke about at the top, it's everything. And I want my clients to be able to trust us and trust our judgment. And sometimes we've been really, really accurate with our pricing. And obviously, sometimes we've waited for a property to come on, and we've ended up purchasing that property, a month later at the price that we sort of recommended it was worth, because that's where the market saw the value as well. And other times, the property sells off market a few days later at the listing price of 2.2 or whatever. So it's really just assessing each property on its merits and just navigating that and just trying to work through that as best you can, right? I don't think some people think that there's this big labyrinth of amazing, or it's a nirvana of amazing properties out there that are all off market, that are 30% below market value, that are all just perfect for them. It's not really the case. And sometimes, there's a time frame as well. Like a vendor may engage 3 different agents and say, look, you've got 2 weeks to sell this property. So in 2 weeks, the agents can't really rustle up a marketing campaign. It's like, okay, let's get on the phone to some key people and some key buyers or some key buyers agents. And let's try and sell this thing before it goes out to the public or before the owner decides not to sell, and maybe they put it back on a rent roll or something like that. So there's just a whole bunch of different reasons.
Yeah. And I guess you wouldn't know those reasons unless you're having those conversations with the real estate agent to know what the vendor's motivation is and trying to match your buyer. Because every buyer's agent, you get your client's finance ready to go. So as soon as an opportunity comes, you're ready to pounce right on it, because time is of the essence, really, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think it's critical for most people. If you're going to engage with a buyer's agent, you've got to be financially ready to buy, because, we're on the ground. We're going for it from the get-go, like trying to find you something, and the opportunities can just pop up, that day or the next day. It can happen really, really quickly.
That's another part with timing, I guess, isn't it? So I've dealt with clients that have been looking, and from my perspective, we're pre-approved, we're ready to go, and then in this market, what was 1.6 6 months ago, we now got a budget of 1.9, and it's like, well, the savings isn't keeping up with the market, so there's a level of frustration. The listed price never equals the sale price, or even is close. They keep getting tipped at the post, especially if they love that property as well. So I feel like, and then I get our clients to speak to a buyer's agent or engage a buyer's agent. Suddenly the success rate goes up significantly, not only from a speed and a timing perspective, but also the type of property that they loved. And sometimes there's 2 types. Obviously, we do it with homeowners. So maybe there's a couple involved and they can't seem to agree on what they want, which is quite common, isn't it? And then there's the other, which is investors. And it's like they just can't seem to find the right investment as well. So how do you then work across, say, the homeowner brief and then the investor brief?
Yeah, good question. And you're right. It's been incredibly challenging over the last 6 to 12 months. Obviously, we've been very fortunate in the market that we operate in, and we've helped a lot of people buy, but it has been very challenging, and it's difficult to have those conversations with clients. If you've missed out on 1 or 2 properties, and they've been looking for a month or 2 months. The goalposts have shifted, and it's just the situation that we're in. But you made me laugh when you spoke about sometimes the partners aren't on the same page.
I think that's sometimes, pretty much always, they're on the same page. I can speak from experience that when Bernie and I were looking for our property, we could not agree on anything. And the first property we agreed on, I'm like, let's buy it, because we both liked it.
Yeah, full-time buyer's agent, part-time counsellor as well. Sometimes, look, it's not uncommon out there for me to have, the wife call me and say, Matt, can you just speak to Aaron about, about how much better it would be if we bought a 4-bedroom in this suburb as opposed to his recommendation of a 3-bedroom in that crap suburb or whatever. And then we get a phone call from the husband and say, look, can you speak to my wife and let her know that this suburb's way better? So, mate, it's just working through the different characters. But I don't know how we operate. It's just, look, we're all in it together, I suppose, and it's just a combination of all three of our inputs, I guess. Especially in the owner-occupier space, it's so much more emotion, and there's reasons why people gravitate towards certain properties and whatnot, or certain areas. It could be schooling, it could be the community, it could be a property that's suitable for young kids, or a property that's suitable for teenagers or whatever. And it's just about piecing that all together to try and match them with the right property. With the investment stuff, I think that's a little bit more clear cut. We have a clear process in place, and there are reasons why we just completely discount properties. One example would just be, flood zone or fire impacted areas. We had clients just on the weekend that were really interested in a property, but it's in a flood zone. And it's just like, look, happy to go and buy that for you if that's what you guys want. But look, here are the implications of buying in a flood zone, and this is always going to come up for you. And just so you know, we'd never recommend that you buy in that particular area for that reason. So those conversations are probably a little bit easier to have with investors because it's obviously a little bit more of a business decision. But the owner-occupier stuff can be a little bit delicate at times, there's no doubt.
Going back to the Central Coast and becoming like a really nice, popular corridor, I guess the location, the closeness to Sydney, hour and a bit, for example, to Central Coast, made, after COVID, made it a very popular decision that you could have a sea change and have the best of both worlds. You still keep your Sydney income, for example. You can have the livability, you've got the social life that you're not too far from maybe family in Sydney. But also with investors looking at, I guess, price point became popular, and then yield became a very popular decision as well. So when you're taking the briefs from an investor that was looking on the Central Coast, what made it a very popular decision from your perspective as well?
Yeah, and look, we invest all over Australia, but obviously we have the little niche here that we can buy properties here on the Central Coast because we just know this area incredibly well. I think from our perspective, one of the most attractive things that we see a lot of investors buy here on the Central Coast is because it's close, it's within arm's reach. So what I mean by that is we have a lot of local Central Coast residents that have grown up here and they're just comfortable with the area. And whether that's right or wrong, that tends to lead them into buying locally, right? Because they can drive past it, they can check on the lawns, they can do maintenance if they need to. So for us, there's a little bit of an emotional attachment there to the investment. Whether that's right or wrong, that's how we see it. And very similar with Sydney people as well. So Sydney people will say, look, we've identified that the Central Coast is obviously a great area to invest because of its affordability, because of its proximity to the CBD, because of the good yields, because of the infrastructure, all of these things. We don't have any interest in investing interstate because we don't feel comfortable to do so, but we are comfortable to invest, at arm's reach, an hour and a half up the road, where if something, catastrophic happens or whatever, they can actually go and visit the property and do what they need to do. But we see that typically. And also the other thing is, which you probably wouldn't think about, is a lot of people that have certain skill sets, so project managers, builders, trades, those guys tend to want to invest, locally or close by. So even if they live in Sydney, so that they can leverage on their skill set to do works on the property and add value if they need to as well, right? So that's a major factor. If they're looking to invest interstate, they're going to say, well, I can't really go and do anything. I can't save on a reno that I want to do or anything like that without major headaches or major transportation. So that's when the Central Coast, and I'm sure other markets like your market down in Wollongong as well, they start to become really attractive to investors.
And when they're doing scope of works, for example, like, hey, look, I'm buying this, maybe I need some love, for example. What are some of the smart ways that you've seen investors be able to come into the market, find a property that needs a bit of TLC, and then is it maybe an extended settlement? Is it maybe trying to get access to trades during that settlement period? Like, what's some smart ways that investors can go, hey, look, if one of your game plans is to renovate or maybe do some cosmetic work to a property to try and increase the rental per week, what are some of those tips that you've got for investors as well?
Yeah, really, really good. And then obviously then the property can be ready to go onto the market for rent and tenants straight away, right? Look, I think it's about just being super transparent and clear with the sales agent from the get-go. Okay, you need to let the sales agent know the purpose of why you're purchasing that property. And if the property does need some TLC, it's about saying to the agent, look, I'm prepared to buy it. I want to buy it at this level. But hey, can we put special conditions in to say that we are able to access the property to do some cosmetic work, like maybe floors, paint, curtains, nothing structurally, so that it is ready for tenants the day of settlement. And I think in that period, you can add a little bit of value there to that property, especially you're going to do those three things that I mentioned. I don't think doing anything structurally, you're not going to be able to do anything structurally, any major works, but certainly you're able to get in there and get some trades in place and do some minor stuff. That's never usually an issue. And I think it's just all about being upfront and transparent with the agent from the get-go. And you should never have an issue getting any trades in there, especially to do quoting. We've actually got something at Baddo Bay right now. We've got a whole bunch of trades going there on Saturday to measure up so that we're ready to go the day of settlement. But it's a good point you raised, but I think it's all just about being transparent the whole way through so that there are no surprises, leading up to settlement.
Yeah, nice. I guess, that's where sometimes investors may be told to play their cards close to their chest. And this almost goes against the grain, which is, hey, be open and be transparent with what you're looking to do here and get you the outcome that you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the best way. That's the best way that I've found personally whenever I've bought property, invested, and even now professionally. I think is if you can be as transparent as you can with the agent and just work in with them, typically you get a pretty good outcome.
Yeah, nice. And you mentioned there before you bought property on your own, and looking back on your journey, a couple of learnings or a couple of when I say learning, it's a double-edged sword. My question. Is there anything that you may have done differently, perhaps looking backwards as well?
Mate, there's one that you would have been able to help me with, definitely. That was my loan structuring. So as I said, I set out to buy the family home that I still live in now at Wamberal, which we're incredibly proud of and that we love. But obviously had the property bug from a young age, and that didn't really leave me even after we bought the first place. So. The loan structuring after from buying this property, we weren't very flexible. We were locked into a fixed term, and it was awful, to be honest. Now that I know what I know, it was awful. So you would have been able to help me. So the big learning for me is loan structuring. It's something that I'm very diligent with today, and thankfully, work with good brokers. And the other thing is, and this hasn't really been bad yet, but I think something bad's going to come up in the future at some point. But one of the properties that we bought interstate down in Adelaide, there's probably a higher presence of government housing than what I would be comfortable with today. Now, certainly much higher than what I would recommend clients buy in today. So, so whatever, however you want to use that. But touch wood, there's been no issues. Thankfully, like most of the Australian property market in decent areas, the value's gone up substantially, and it's never not been tenanted, which is great. But yeah, I know there are some less desirable characters pretty close by. So
let's hope for a bit of vacation there, perhaps in Adelaide.
Yeah, someone needs to put a coffee shop at the end of that street.
That's in a funky coffee shop in the area, mate. You'll see the tide turn pretty quickly.
Exactly. But look, I think you said it, it's a double-edged sword. I don't think there are any failures. It's just learnings along the way. And without buying, that second or that first investment outside of this place, and, I wouldn't have really known anything about loan structuring. I certainly wouldn't be so diligent with that today if I hadn't have gone through that. And yeah, obviously the other stuff with the government housing, like I said, it probably will never be an issue, but it's something I'm very aware of now, and it's something that I really look to monitor. And even, that was even just looking from a data perspective and looking at online mappings or whatever. It's one thing now that we check, and obviously I know this area here on the Central Coast. It's checking the surrounding areas and the neighbours and a couple of streets across, just to try and get a really good feel as to what's there. And we do that obviously interstate as well. And I do that with my own properties as well because, I just want to try and manage it as best I can.
Excellent, mate. Well done. Should be really proud. I mean, build a portfolio. I mean, you mentioned before building family as well. So that's the next frontier for you. And super excited to hear that you got a new addition coming on your way. And man, I wish you every success. I know that business is great, and there'll be a time when the market does slow down at some point in the future. Can't continue the best way, but the good businesses will stand out. That have done the deep hard work and served their clients very well. So I'm sure you'll fit in that category, mate, because you've definitely done a great job for the clients that we've worked on together and the work that we've done together, mate. I know that you play with a straight bat, so well done.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. A bit of a question without notice. What's harder for you personally, building the family or building the portfolio?
Yeah, before kids, I would have said building a portfolio, and without a doubt, building a family comes with its own challenges because there is no blueprint for it. Is what I do. Is what I'd say actually. So, but I'd say that family is more rewarding without a doubt, and I think before when I used to talk with clients, I think pre-kids, I would have said that property was your greatest asset. Right now, I think after the pandemic, I'd say family is your greatest asset, followed very closely by your health, and then your wealth is how we look at it. I feel like it's really helped, and I don't feel I'm alone in that sentiment either. I feel a lot of people have made that decision to vote with their feet, moving out of capital cities, sea change, tree change, lifestyle change, work situation change, where they're going, hang on, I can work like a mad person, work around the clock, but I'm actually moving forward in my life. And the work then has either led to their family, less time with their family, or less time to work on their health, whether that's physically or mentally or spiritually. And now people are I think they're taking that control back. And that's what I love about property. You can change your property. You can sell it. You can move somewhere else. And I guess that's the beauty of it. But you can't, to change your family, it takes a lot more work and probably sets you back a little bit, right? But I guess it's what makes you happy. Is a very long way to answer your question.
No,
really,
isn't it? Good. It's good. I love it, mate. And it's absolutely a priority for us as well. And so fortunate to live. I know you're obviously down in Thirroul, which is a beautiful part of the world. We're here on the Central Coast, and no doubt you've experienced it as well. But, the silver lining on the back of everything from COVID, and sorry to bore everyone because, it's been spoken about to death, but it's absolutely the silver lining. The amount of people that we've helped relocate here to the Central Coast, and they're literally checking in with me weekly, monthly, just saying, we have literally never been happier. They're working from home. They're only traveling to Sydney, once a week or maybe once every couple of weeks, whatever it may be. And the more time that they get to spend with their family and on their health and whatever else is incredible. And the other side to that is, even local buyers that we've helped buy here, and even friends within our community and network, the people that used to travel down to the CBD every single day on the train are no longer doing it. It's like, I'm gained back 4 hours a day.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we'd have friends that would leave their front.
They don't know themselves anymore.
No, like it's just, I think I think on the back of obviously the pandemic, it's just like, it's almost like we've shot forward a decade or 2 decades where everyone's now comfortable, and with technology everyone can now work from home and be far more flexible. But I think, that's absolutely a silver lining for sure. And I think also everyone's far more grateful for what they have, right? I mean, I know me, I train every morning, and even in the gym at the moment, because I trained outdoors for like 4 months, which was a challenge in itself. But almost every day I'm just walking to the gym. I'm not really a big gym junkie or anything like that. I just enjoy.
There's something to do, right?
Yeah, but I'm just in there now, just looking around going, oh my God, I'm so happy to be here.
I feel like it's kind of hit home some hard truths, which is what we're grateful for and to be really appreciative. And buying property in Australia is an expensive exercise sometimes, but look where we live, and to be in this country and the systems that we've got. I feel like we are truly blessed. We're on the genetic lottery to be living in this country. So to be able to buy and or invest in this country, there is a reason why it's so expensive, because the beaches are pristine. It's a safe, beautiful country. We've got fresh produce, mate.
Amazing.
Can't go wrong with that, can you?
And I'm sure you can't. And I'm sure you've seen it in your business, but a lot of people are coming back from overseas. You know, we've helped people from Germany, England, the States, Hong Kong. They're all coming back because, obviously the secret's out. Yeah, the lifestyle.
Beautiful, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we'll include your details, Matt. So if anyone's thinking about buying on the Central Coast or wants to have a chat with Matt, we'll include your details. And I really appreciate your time and really appreciate you lifting the hood in your business and sharing some really great insights, Matt. Thanks very much.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks so much for having me. And it's always good to have a chat.
Wonderful. Excellent. That's wrapped up another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. If you found that helpful, leave us a review or give some comments as well about any other questions you've got that you want to ask Matt. And we'll look forward to chatting with you soon. Until next time, take care.